Hey network, how are you doing today? Today I just want to talk about something that I mentioned in my last videos, and that is the Tony Stark Iron Man skins that I would want in Marvel's Avengers. Now, what I'm kind of expecting from the skins in this game is kind of probably a little bit more than what they're going to give us. I kind of expect it to be something similar to the Spider-Man PS4 game, where you'll have the skin and you would have a new special ability to go along with it. I would love for it to be like that, but I'm expecting it not to be. But in this video I will do what I think are the aesthetically cool looking armors and a cool ultimate ability with it, and they aren't done in any particular order. There are only 5 of them, so you know, it's nothing from greatest to leastest, or leastest to greatest. I don't have that going on. But before we get into the video, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. I will appreciate it. That helps out the channel so much. But let's get into the video. So my first armor that I do want to talk about is the Model 40 armor. Now, what I like about this armor is that it looks rigged, it looks amazing. It has like a booster pack on the back, and it is just one of the most rigged looking designs ever. This armor was made in the comic books. All these armors I'm going to talk about are made in the comic books, but this particular one was made in secret, like the first Mark 1 armor was made. But this one was later in his career, after he's made a lot of them, and it was only made because the Mandarin, you know, mind controlled Tony Stark and Ezekiel Stane to help build these machines that Spider-Man and Tony Stark designed, and they got leaked online, and the Mandarin wanted to use these machines and put his Macaron rings with it. But Tony was the only one who was able to make him. Once he got him into, you know, custody or in prison, Tony had to figure out a way to help him and all the other villains and good guys, you know, help them escape, and making this armor was the only way. Now, this armor right here was made for heavy combat. You know, it was meant for Tony to be like the front foreman in the most guerrilla style warfare ever. You know, and one of the most capabilities of this armor is that he can connect with something called the Swarm. That is a cloud-based computing bots that Tony could use to control different things that he wants to use the bots for. They were called the Swarm. But anyway, so let's go into my next armor that I do want to talk about. And my next one that I do want to talk about is Extremis. Now, the Extremis Armor made Tony one of the most deadly superheroes at the time. He was able to use this thing called the Sheath. It would go inside his body and come out on top of his skin at will. And the virus he injected himself with was called the Extremis virus. He changed a few components of it, and boom, bada bam, this dude is a living computer. He was able to contact his armor, satellites, radios, all kinds of things just with his mind, and he can process things a lot faster now. So this guy wasn't smart already, he's super smart now. Now, the thing I like about this armor in particular, it was nothing too radically different than one of his other ones, was called the Pentagon, but this one in particular, it just has a nice sleek design, and that, you know, he can use one of his abilities. I would say one of the extremist abilities he can use to help control like some of the weapons on the field. He can say that the you know, if there are turrets around, they will start aiming back at the enemies themselves. Now, that would be a cool way to use this armor itself. This isn't something it's different than what he used in the MCU. So yeah, anyway, let's move on to the next armor. So the next one I do want to talk about is the Stealth Armor. Now, the Stealth Armor isn't anything particular. If he was to use this in combat on the actual game, then he wouldn't be able to use combat, because this one wasn't designed for combat. It was used for stealth designs, I mean stealth missions, but they could probably make exceptions for it if they put it in the game. And if he was to use it, I would say he can use it for EMP, EPM, or whatever, radio, electrical magnetic pulse, EMP signals to disperse, you know, radio contact with the enemies or their guns, or, you know, disable weapons or something like that. This armor wasn't really made for anything in particular, or out of any kind of malice or anything like that. So let's go on to the next armor. So the next armor is made from the Deep Space Armor. Now this was made by Tony, no surprise there, but the surprise comes in that he made it because he joined the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now this was one of his most modular designs. He can use to equip different things at different times when he was out in space. So if he needed a warp drive, he can connect a warp drive to it, or he needed to equip a bigger piece of armor, he can do that to make himself bulkier and travel a lot faster, like Mach 10 speeds. Now if he was to use this armor at its base state, he can either do two things if he had an ultimate for this armor. Now if he had an ultimate, I would say I would want the armor to, you know, equip like the Hulk Buster type armor and fight the enemies if they don't make a Hulk Buster armor. But if they do make a separate Hulk Buster armor, I would want this to actually move real fast. I would want him to move fast with this armor, and he beats the enemies up at, you know, really fast speeds, which would be amazing. So yeah. Now the last but not least armor that I do want to talk about is the Prometheus Armor. Now this armor doesn't really do much other than keep Tony Stark alive in the comic books, but this armor itself was badass looking from my perspective. The exhaust ports on the back just make it look like heinous, like the steam coming out of it. It just makes it look so heinous. But this armor was made because Tony almost died when he stopped being Iron Man, and he had to keep himself alive, and putting himself in this armor and total life support was the only way for that to happen. But the thing with the exhaust ports is so that he can absorb heat and energy, so he can either shoot it back at the enemy, or, you know, absorb it and use the steam exhaust ports to push it back out. You know, so if he was to have an ultimate, that would be the ultimate, to absorb energy blasts like bullets, you know, and stuff like that, and he can shoot them back at the enemies using his unibeam or some other big gun he can have attached to his arm. You know, if they do make any of these suits, they won't be the exact same design, but they will be close and similar enough for you to know where they came from. So I will hope these suits do make it in there. They are very aesthetically pleasing, and I'm pretty sure that the Marvel Avengers could make them, and I'm pretty sure they're already making them anyway. But this time, until next time, network, watch my last video I made on Iron Man, hit the subscribe button, and as always, you rule.